Welcome to the continuation of the countdown. We focus on one trader today who is able to do $250K to $2 million in 2 days this week on Tesla. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. I wanted to special shout out to our Patreon supporters as well as our subscribers. If you enjoy the show, please take time to like and subscribe. So there's one other thing I wanted to note about our show, and that is that I've done some soul searching in how we do things, what we say. And there's a problem that's kind of happening that I want you to be aware of in terms of choice to watch or not. And that is that there's something called research universities. In a research university, they don't give you a textbook and say, memorize this and everything's fine. What they actually say is, here's a bunch of information, create something out of it. And so those are two different types of education and learning. So one of the challenges we've had with our channel is people actually saying to us, Greg, why do you do different topics, etc., that don't fit the mold of what everybody else does? And the answer is, if we did the same stuff everybody else does, you wouldn't watch the channel, number one. But number two, this channel actually requires you to think. And if I tell you the color of the car or drop information to you that's fairly mundane, it doesn't require you to think. And so I wanted to note that to you because I want my comment space to be reserved for people with smart stuff, supportive stuff, but stuff that people can use that adds value. And so don't be surprised if your stuff gets deleted or you get blocked if you make comments that are dumb, because our goal here is to have people support Tesla, make money, and grow. And the way things are covered may not be sort of a spoon-fed method, i.e. a teaching, the difference between a teaching and a research university. One quick example I wanted to make to this is that I saw a great comment which relates to a show that I've been thinking about for like the last 6 or 8 months, but haven't been able to figure out how to get it onto the screen. And that is that when GM sold the European operations, the $2 billion they got, they actually returned it to shareholders at the very same time that Tesla was finishing the Gigafactory. So we argued that it makes no sense to give the money back because you have to build a Gigafactory to compete with Tesla. So what ended up happening is that, as you can see, they're now modeling with LG the same routine and building a Gigafactory, except for they're 2 or 3 years behind and therefore less affected in delivery. So I bring this up to you because it's fascinating, because when you look at how companies operate, particularly ones that have been successful as GM, it's more of a teaching university situation where there's a path that they've been on for a long time, and their goal is to stay on that path and make money for everybody involved from doing that. The problem is when Elon came in with Tesla, he's applying a research university model to the auto business. And so nobody thought this was possible. Props to Elon and his whole crew for doing this. But in essence, they've forced all these big companies out into the unknown waters of research universities where the answers to what you're supposed to do, when do it, etc., it's not clear blatantly. So therefore, their people are going to make decisions that will be permanently destroy their companies. And they're the kind of decisions that haven't, nobody in that industry or nobody in that company has had to make over the last 100 years, but now they're being forced to. Classic component of that is, it was argued by the big firms, Bob Lutz and others, that it's a much better idea to buy batteries from the experts at LG and others than it is to build a factory of your own and sell those batteries. And so hence, no building of battery factories by the giant firms. And now they have a disaster on their hands because they're all trying to buy from the same suppliers. And the battery is such a high cost component of the vehicle that it really drives whether or not that vehicle will be viable and that company viable in the future. So it's created this sort of crazy environment. And so it was thought that places like Silicon Valley couldn't effectively ride into the auto business and create chaos. But obviously, we're finding that not to be the case. So all this is a precursor to what I wanted to talk about today on two-tier level. The first is we actually had, there are a few trading groups that I'm a part of. One of them, we actually had someone that picked up 150 contracts at, on Tesla when it was about $400 a share. On that first day, they made something like $1.5 million in that first hour of trading. And they stuck it out into day two this week and actually pushed that number to about a $2 million gain after investing $250K. Now, there's some luck involved, timing. It was a beautiful trade. There's no way you could argue that it was not. Not everybody has $250K to put up in a risky situation like that. But I wanted to sort of dive into this because there's a question mark that's lurking here. Between now and the 21st, our expectation is Tesla is going to rise quite nicely. The issue that's coming up is that if you have the potential to make those kind of dollars, I really think if you've already owned Tesla shares or have been in it for a long time, this is really the time to buckle down and bringing new tools like options into your process and therefore have the opportunity to potentially make a lot of money. Now, one of the things I'm noticing is there are people joining my Patreon space, and we actually cover where the trading is, et cetera. But there's this thing where it's one thing to talk about, think about, look at what's happening. It's another thing to sort of put yourself in a position where you're spending a day, an hour or two a day, trying to optimize how your portfolio is structured relative to access to opportunity. Because what you'll notice is if you read the comment section, there's some real pros that are retired or whatever, and they'll throw comments in there that are absolutely brilliant that you could make a killing off of. And so I really want our space to sort of be cleared away for opportunity for people to gather information that really generates a lot of numbers. One of them that I saw this week, and I forget who put it up there, but you could look back through our comments and you'll see it, that I'm shaking my head at after I saw it, is there's a situation where you can actually do what's called sell puts or sell calls. It can be very risky, but one of our viewers made the comment to me. He said, oh, this trade is very simple. All you have to do is sell some puts on Tesla and take the premium, and now you have money to invest in calls relative to the direction you actually think the stock is going in. So you might want to stop the tape and replay what I just said. So in essence, there's a concept in options trading called selling a call or selling a put. And so in essence, what you can do is go out there through your firm and sell puts on Tesla right now. So what number would that be? Something like a 400 put or a 350 put. If you look it up and you give it some time value, you literally just sold an entity into the marketplace. Now, as soon as you sell that, your brokerage firm will send you money, right? So now you have a pile of money sitting there, and the question is, what are you going to do with that money? And the answer that was shared by our viewer was, you can actually take that money and buy calls on Tesla. And so your out of pocket to do this trade is a giant zero, but your potential is to make a huge amount of money. So I love the comment. There's a lot of background to this that it takes to understand this trade. And I'm happy to, if you sign up for trade consulting, we can actually talk about it. But what this brings up is that options trading is kind of a complex entity in that, like, if you know what it is, it's no big deal. But if once you're getting into it, it's easy to sort of think that, it's not a powerful tool. It can be very risky. You can definitely lose the money. At the same time, though, it can also be an incredibly powerful tool for making a huge amount of money in a short period of time, especially if you understand the company you're working with and why they're rising and where their stock price is going confidently. Opportunity is phenomenal, which is why we're kind of doing this once a day show thing all the way until the 21st, because there are a lot of details one might want to have. Now, do not do what I call the cheapskate plan. So we regularly get these comments like, there's a trade I want to do and it's X trade, and what do you think of me doing that trade? And the answer is that in an open forum, there are licenses required to make certain comments, etc. And so it ain't gonna happen. I'm not making comments on your trades in an open forum in that manner, because it might be a securities law violation, and I don't get in trouble if I don't say anything. But I'm impressed by folks doing that. The other thing I find interesting is that there's this cheapo phenomenon where, hey, you're planning on making $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $1 million in 30 days. You want to have as much information as you can of high quality to make a good decision to try to get there. So paying a little money to get some trade consulting is a good idea. Now, if you join Patreon, there's information that's flowing there, but it's a totally different deal to one-on-one look at your portfolio, look at your situation, and try to get there. Now, I wanted to review, perhaps at the end of today's show, something that I just saw on my page I thought was really funny. So there's a Patreon supporter who owns 117 shares of Tesla stock. So let's call it $50,000 worth of stock. Now, he made a comment to me. He said, why would I want to mess around with options? He's got like $3,000 and he's thinking about whether or not he wants to do options. And so he said to me, well, why should I do options when I can just wait for Tesla to get to, I think it's 578. And if the stock gets to there, he makes, I think, $9,000. And I was thinking, wow, that's a very good point. You could make $9,000. And then he made the case that, well, if I buy options with 3K, and I forget the scenario he makes, but he's like, maybe I make 12K if the thing rises in value consistent with that, right? So therefore, it's not worth the time to learn because the incremental increase in the value is this minimal amount. Very good point. Here's what's a challenge with that. So once you understand how to trade options, there are endless combinations of how things could go, how you could structure yourself to make money on this trade. Now, in this case, just one quick one I wanted to cover is if you have $50,000, right, in stock, you're allowed to margin up to 25% or up to 50% of that. In some cases, they're allowing leverage to go 4 times, which is totally amazing, nuts in my mind. But let's just make this a simple one. The reason you don't want to sell your shares is as soon as you sell, it creates a taxable event. That taxable event results in tax implications, etc. That's why people use margin. Now, margin is dangerous. Why? Because if the stock falls, you get a margin call. If the stock rises, though, you're still making money on your shares while the money you pulled out is being used to make money as well. Another note is that the interest on those options or on the margin is also deductible. So there's a lot of ways in which one could win by doing this. So under the scenario he gave me, let's say for the giggles, you take 50K, you margin $25,000 in cash now in hand, and you buy a leap, or you buy an option that runs, months into next year, right? So now, if Tesla rises, so let's say your option is 3 to 6 months out. If Tesla rises 50 points, the option's value at least doubles, possibly triples. So now your 25K becomes 75K. So this is a very simple, basic example of what might happen, and the fact that you can use certain structured strategies for getting better return at a really, really important time point. So I wanted to mention this because I'm watching different people trying to do different things in terms of if and how they get into this trading. And the number one thing that I wanted to note is that one of the funny things is that when there's huge opportunity going on like this, there's a hard decision to be made. Do you simply try to be as cheap as possible and make very little or no money? Or B, do you put in the time to understand what's going on and how this might be an opportunity for you to actually make a huge amount of cash in a very short period of time while it's optimally available? And so I just think it's an interesting circumstance because it requires you to do some work, it requires you to do some thinking, and the answer is you get nicely rewarded for doing so. Now, at the back end of this, I wanted to also highlight to you, like, if you look at our show about the 500 pin, if you're going to be in this game, one of the things you might want to note is, for example, if you want to buy Tesla shares heading into this period, and you specifically want to exploit how the market makers tend to pin Tesla stock price on Fridays, one of the best days of the week to buy Tesla stock is after it's being forced down artificially by the market makers. And so that might be a strategy where if the stock is up and you want shares or et cetera, it could be, you could do that. A trade that happened on Friday I thought was interesting was just the fact that we predicted that the stock price would end up below 500, and they had to make sure it was a wide enough cushion that nobody could sneak it back over because there was so much money to be made by the market makers. Well, guess what? You can actually buy puts on a temporary basis, ride those puts down, make money on them, and then get back on the call side at the end of the day after you've seen all the carnage that those guys can do. So I bring up this little trade here because one of the things that's happening in options trading, et cetera, that doesn't happen so most people have been trained in the investment process, buy and hold. Well, guess what? In the options world, you can make money on anything moving up or down. Sideways, you can't make a lot there, but up or down can be very lucrative. So Tesla is a little bit like a jump rope in that you have a situation happening here where there's a way in which the rope is moving and you're trying to understand how and what it's doing and how can you get in there, collect your block of cash, and then after collecting it, you're now in a very strong position. And taking the time to read Taleb's book, read Peter Lynch's book, which is down listed below, all these things could be impactful in terms of your command of what's going on in the space and how you might optimize it profitably. So I bring all this up because our goal is for you to end up making a lot of money this month. And one of those ways is by introducing options to your process. And by doing so, wealth and so forth comes from that situation. And so that's what we're trying to achieve with these comments. I do think that this is a difficult show because there's spoon feeding that we don't do because it takes a lot of time, and it's easier to do based on situations on an individual basis. So hit us up on Facebook, the private messenger, or sign up at one of our levels for Patreon. And I think you'll find that there's a lot of good information that you'll be getting on a daily basis that'll help you prepare for a profitable encounter with what Tesla is going to do over the next few weeks. we have a show coming up tomorrow that I'm kind of editing right now. We had a chance to talk with our expert about what's going on with Tesla over the next few weeks. And the big issue that's happening right now is, where are we in the process of Tesla shares? It's my argument that we see the 550s, maybe 600. There are other arguments out there that says that what happened this week with that 100-point move pretty much took us there, with all the the large investment firms that are forced to enter the shares have already done so. And so therefore, the run of Tesla that we might have seen is somewhat near its end. I don't agree with that, but this is one of the challenges of trading, is that there'll be different blocks of information coming from different sides, and you have to make your call from there. One of the fun things I think about the S&P is that not only are there the primary, number of funds that surround it that people have sort of glommed onto to develop products for customers, but there's also the S&P plus entities, where people have created a lot of ancillary funds that have a lot of shares that actually leverage the best of what the S&P does, but also tax on other ways to help investors make more money. And so you end up with a lot larger count of dollars coming after shares that have to be purchased than might be obviously on the surface for those. So we will get into that in the conversation that we have with our expert, Wayne Green. I wanted to remind you of our usual health tips. Don't forget 25 leg lifts a day per leg, strengthen the quad muscles. Don't forget only once a week for fried foods. You might want to consider a 5-2 or another diet. Of the 200 doctors we surveyed, about 60% of them are doing some kind of fasting diet. 5-2 is one of them. Another doctor suggested only eat on 12 hours of the clock, meaning you eat during a 12-hour period on one half the clock, but not on the other. That's another one that's easy to remember that I thought was kind of neat. Another sort of weird fasting idea that I got from a friend of mine, whose dad's a doc, is that she had a doctor consultant give her a diet because she was having a difficult time losing weight. And the basics of the diet was, if you can't pronounce what it is, you're not allowed to eat it. So high fructose corn syrup, all these different things that are lurking in our diet, the suggestion was made that you not eat anything that you can't pronounce, and try that out for a couple of weeks, see how you feel after doing that. Because I have a sort of a mental battle going right now. There's a Stanford professor named Dr. Sapolsky, and he teaches at the med school, but he's a PhD he wrote a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. And so we kind of I have a debate going with him that he kind of knows or doesn't know about. And what he was talking about is the fact that in the 20s, breast cancer was so rare that when they saw it in the hospitals, people would zoom in just to see it. And he made the comment to me, and I keep wondering, I've always wondered, after he said this to me, and this is about 7-8 years ago, I keep wondering, what is it about the diet of people in the 20s that resulted in breast cancer being almost non-existent and being really interesting when it occurs? And we're so advanced now that it's routine for people to have that issue. And I'm just wondering what it is that's going into our bodies that results in routine breast cancer issues where we didn't have those issues back in the 20s. And should we consider rotating backwards to a 20s type of diet? Because then we have the opportunity of eliminating all these health challenges that people are having to deal with. May not be possible for a whole bunch of reasons, but I just think the question is really interesting. At any rate, wanted to thank you for joining us today. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss, German, au revoir, French, lehitro, Hebrew, Choda Hafez, Farsi, hey do, Swedish, namaste, Hindi, assalamu alaikum, Muslim, hey do, ni hao ma, Chinese, ohayou gozaimasu, Japanese. Have a great day. Bye for now. Thanks for joining us. We look forward to our next conversation. And if you'd like some trade consulting ideas, please hit us up on Patreon or through private messenger on Facebook. this is a chance to make a lot of money. So I'd encourage you to spend a little money, get better trained, and allow yourself to make a nice killing here at the end of the year as we head into the S&P for Tesla. Have a great day and bye for now.